Welcome to the Better Than Rich Show with your hosts, Andrew Biggs and Mike Abramowitz. The Better Than Rich Show helps ambitious leaders who are on a mission to leave the world better than they found it, change their perspective on what's important, increase their income and impact, and systemize their life and business. If you've ever struggled with finding your purpose, have felt disconnected or distracted, or found yourself going through the motions, this show will remind you that what you do matters and will re-inspire you to chase your highest dreams. It's time for you to become better than rich.
All right, welcome everybody to the Better Than Rich Show. I'm your host, Andrew Biggs, and today we're doing something a little bit different, as you can tell. We're here on site of our Business Leadership Mastery event, and I'm here with my co-host, Mike Abramowitz, and we are excited to kind of have a little bit of a different setup. We have a really cool opportunity to actually do a podcast where we're in person, right, instead of over Zoom, and so I just think that gives us a cool opportunity to pitch and catch in a different way, Mike. But how are you doing today?
Yeah, it's been fun setting up the event, and we have 20 great people coming, and just being able to serve them, and just we're already seeing the chat kind of blow up with people landing, flights coming in. Yeah. Got two guys going to the casino tonight.
Okay. Let's hope they actually get to the event on time tomorrow. Okay, you know who you are. Yeah. Be here at 9 a.m. Okay. No, but that's great, man. And as you can tell from the screen, today's topic is the power of purpose. And Mike and I have had a chance to sit down really all week, right, and talk about our brand, what it represents, who we are to the marketplace, and what we've really landed on. It's been somewhat similar to this, but we're just honing it in further and further and further. Which anybody who's ever done branding and marketing, that's just part of the process, right? Just continually uncovering more and more about the specifics of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. What we've really landed on is this opportunity for us to help people systemize their life and systemize their business. And so it's kind of serving the individual, but then also serving their business needs. And so one of these topics today is more so on the life side, and that's the power of purpose. And it's really foundational to everything that we do, who we are, is to help people discover their purpose, right? When you discover your purpose, life becomes just so much more meaningful, so much more exciting, and you feel like you're in the game. You're not just going through the motions on a daily basis. And so I'm excited to break down this topic and just kind of riff with you back and forth. But when we talk about the power of purpose from your perspective, what's something that comes up right away? And I'd love to hear you just kind of kick us off, and we can dive into just different concepts around this topic.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I've evolved in personal growth, as I've continued to learn more, it's become more meaningful. Purpose has become even more meaningful every single time. So initially, when I learned about purpose, going back maybe a decade and a half ago, it was just like, this is purpose and mission is almost like the same thing. It's like, this is my mission in life, this is my purpose in life, my vision in life. They all kind of blended together. But recently, I realized that purpose is more of like the depth. It's like going down to the roots of who I am, who I'm out to become, what am I out to do, what do I want to accomplish, and being rooted to something and planting a flag into something that's really, really deep. So I anchored that purpose to a purpose statement, and that purpose statement is that the purpose of my life is to educate, inspire, and be a force for good for myself and others. And when I say that to myself, I think about, number one, myself, because sometimes purpose is what I do for the outside world, but purpose also, if I can't fill from an empty cup. So purpose for myself and also for others, I think is really powerful. So whatever it is, as we have this conversation of like, whatever your purpose is, it's got to be for me, and it's also got to be for we. There's got to be something that's grander than just possessions or travel, or my purpose is to, something surface level. Like, it's got to be real deep.
Right. And if you can't rattle off your purpose statement the way Mike did right there, then you don't have your purpose down well enough, right? It needs work. It needs some sort of shaping and molding.
And to your point, that little sentence, purpose of my life is to educate, inspire, be a force for good for myself and others, was like dozens of scratch sheets of paper, positioning words, scratching words off, like just the whole works, just to get to this condensed, memorized sentence that feels really aligned.
Well,
and
that's
nice.
like just as like a little sidebar. It's like so many people don't realize how much personal growth and development is like a trial and error process, and it's really like a creative process. It's like an artist at work, and you're like creating your identity, and you're even what we have planned for this weekend, even though it's a business event. It's a lot of like, we have so many Post-it notes you guys would not believe. Like it's going to be so much like, coming up with something and then tearing it apart and saying, nope, that's not it, right? One of my favorite choreographers growing up when we were doing dancing and our musicals and stuff, he would come up with something, he'd teach it to us, we'd do it, and then he'd go, yeah, hate it, change it, let's go. And we'd immediately change it because, until you... Yeah, man. Yeah, I can dance. I can do. Yeah, I did a bunch of like tap and jazz and a triple threat. It's called in the theater business, right? Sing, dance, and act. So sprinkle a little piano on top, right? But what I would say around purpose is like, first off, you guys have to understand, and this is where everyone has to start with purpose. You have to ask yourself, does life have a purpose, right? And I mean, that's, when we think about deep questions, you have to go there and ask yourself that. If you are to have a purpose, then obviously you have to assume that everything has a purpose, right? And that's the foundational question. And, I've kind of grappled with that question personally. And sometimes I'm like, no, it's all, nothing matters, right? Kind of the old...
Especially when things are challenging.
Correct, right? And it's like nothing really matters. And, or you just want to not feel pain, right? And so you go into this Bohemian Rhapsody, sort of way of like, well, nothing really matters. We're all just dust in the wind, and we're here today, gone tomorrow. But what I'd really like to challenge people with is to think about, everybody, can we kind of intellectualize not having a purpose and kind of be like, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm just a speck of dust floating through space, I only live for 80 years and the universe apparently has been here for 13.7 billion years or whatever, so why does it matter what I do today? And we can kind of justify that. But the truth is, every single person lives as if they have a purpose, right? Even if that purpose is simply to bring about better situations for yourself and others, you will act, you will take action, whether it's going to a job that you hate or it's paying the bills on time or whatever. You are always going to act in a way, in such a way that does have a purpose, and you're acting as if it does. And so basically it's like you will work to create better situations for yourself, and that should be a clue that you actually do care, right? Because if nothing has a purpose, then why do you care about the war in Ukraine? If nothing has a purpose, why do you care about human rights? If nothing has a purpose, why do you care about a starving child, on the streets or in Africa or wherever? Doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't care if life doesn't have a purpose. That's a perfectly acceptable outcome, right? Yeah. All of those things. So I'll shut up.
One of the things that you have talked about a bunch with me and also with Better Than Rich is one of the purposes is to minimize the amount of suffering that one experiences, right? So even if that's the opposite, so if the purpose is to minimize suffering, well, that's okay, right? If we say minimize suffering, then if we're minimizing something, then what are we maximizing? So if we're minimizing suffering, then the opposite might be maximizing fulfillment. Mm-hmm. And that's where the curiosity begins. So if we could start being curious on, what do I want to maximize in my life? If I want to minimize suffering, then what do I want to maximize? Do I want to maximize my friendships? Do I want to maximize my experiences? Do I want to maximize what I'm learning? What am I able to teach? And that's something I've been really diving into. I'm 36, I'll be 37 in June, and thinking in my life, it's like, if I could spend the first half of my life, assuming I live to, let's say, 90, until 45, if I could spend the first half of my life learning as much as possible, and then I spend the second half of my life teaching everything that I just spent the first half of my life learning. And where I learned this concept is, I think it was maybe Carnegie who said, I want to spend the first half of my life earning and the second half of my life giving all that money away. So it's like I spend the first half making my money, second half giving it all away. And I took that and I said, What if I took that with knowledge? Get as much knowledge as I possibly can in my first half of my life, second half of my life, be the sage who can just like teach and give and offer more. And that seems to ring really true for me. Hence my purpose statement of educate, inspire, and be a force for good for myself and others. And I think about all the little Mikes, like the little me's that are like coming up in the rankings. And that's where a lot of the passion in my like late 20s, early 30s of grab tomorrow and going to the schools and speaking. And like, I specifically remember going to Thurgood Marshall Middle School and having a kid
I love that you went to all the schools.
A kid, a child, like it was just so memorable to have this kid stand up and talking about like purpose and some of these deep type of conversations, like your goals and your purpose in life and why you're here. And he's like, I want to be a professional soccer player. I said, why is that important to you? He said, that's because my uncle's a professional soccer player somewhere maybe like Colombia or wherever it was. And I said, that's amazing. So why is that important to you? He says, because I want to be even better. I said, how are you showing up for this purpose and this goal that you have? He said, well, I wake up 2 hours before school and I do my running before I come to school. And he, he's probably 7th grade, talking about running before he goes to school, doing a workout before he even goes to school. That's like 5 a.m. for a kid. And he's just like lit up with energy. And at the end, he pulled me aside at the end of the class, and he's just like, thank you so much for asking me, because no one ever asked me that. Like whenever I tell anyone I want to be a professional soccer player, they're like, well, maybe you should be a doctor. And then, it's like one of those. And it's just being able to pour like belief and draw that out of like kids was so powerful for me to be able to play that part. And I know like there's been mentors in my life that have been able to bring that out of me. So it's a beautiful mission. I'm not saying you should have that mission of go educate and inspire people, but the idea of something that serves you in your past and you in your future. And if you can kind of figure out what that is, what is that piece of life that's fulfilling, that's energizing, that's enjoyment, that is that allows you to be more, to become more, to do more, to enjoy more, that's where some curiosities can lie. You might even want to rewind back and just write some of those questions down. What do I want to be, become, enjoy, do, and just anchor that into something that's meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I think about purpose, one of the things that a really powerful question I received that really became the foundation of this brand was, what's the problem you're here to solve? And kind of like, if life has a purpose and there are problems to solve, then each of us is here to solve a problem. Some people are good and equipped to solve certain problems, right? And some people are better at serving others. Some people are really good with people. Some people are really good with words. Some people are really good with numbers. Some people have this sort of skills. Some people have these other sorts of skills. Some people are creative. Some people aren't, okay? They just aren't. It's okay. Not everybody's creative. Some people are...
And we could call that a gift.
Exactly.
So we all have different gifts.
Everyone has different gifts. Everyone has different strengths. And so what we want to try to do is find like this intersection, this Venn diagram between, what you care deeply about and what you're really good at and what you're qualified to actually try to solve, right? I'm not qualified to try to get us to Mars. I'm just not. Let's leave that to Elon, and I'm really glad he's working on it. But the reality is, like, what is your, kind of Venn diagram and that intersection of your strengths, your superpowers, if you will, and then what you care deeply about and what you're actually qualified to do based on your experience and your education. That doesn't mean you need a formal education in something, right?
What does education even mean?
Correct. It could just be self-education. It could be formal education. It could be experiential education, right? Just like, hey, I've been doing this for 5 years. I'm experienced now. Or I've been doing this for 10 years, 15, 20 years. Or I've been doing this informally. All the time, my friends come to me and ask me questions about X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, you have experience doing it then.
That's what Tony Robbins says, I have a PhD in results. That's what he says.
Right?
It's a PhD in results,
That's
right?
all that matters, right? Especially these days. So can you land at that problem to solve? And again, a lot of the work that we like to do, we like to ask people specific questions about like, hey, what pisses you off? What breaks your heart? What's the secret dream of your heart? What could you spend all day doing and not get bored? And these are all clues. If you had $1 billion, right, after you traveled the world and partied for a couple years, what would you then decide to spend your time doing? So these are just some questions to help you.
A great question that I've journaled on many times. It's like, if it was a perfect Saturday, what would I do? If it was a perfect Saturday and a free day, like, what is it? And it's, for me, it was mind-blowing. I look back to like 2016 journal entry, and I look back to like 2013 journal entry, like 2019. Like, it seems like I've done this in like a 3-year interval, and it's almost the exact same thing. And it's for me, it's so simple. It's like I lead such a simple life, and I love that. I love that about myself. It sounds weird, but I love that it doesn't take much for me to want to be fulfilled. I mean, you're talking about waking up and enjoying a sunrise. It's like, waking up, enjoying a sunrise at dawn, cool breeze, some workout, good conversation with my wife. It's like so small. But if we could find those beautiful small gifts, we don't need wealth, money, an abundance of time, abundance of resources to find those small gifts. If we could find those small gifts, more than likely, that's where the riches and the money and all of that stuff is going to come from. I just finished 2 awesome audiobooks. I read the book, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Everyone, if you follow the show, it's my man crush, but McConaughey's awesome. And then I just finished the audiobook Will with Will Smith. Sure. And those 2 audiobooks are fantastic, but these are 2 men who really speak to my soul because they have conquered what it means to be wealthy, what it means to be like quote unquote rich financially, and their family, they're overcoming the upbringings that they have of like not necessarily broken homes, but kind of beaten homes, and it's like, I love that rags to riches type of story. But if you hear them speak, Jim Carrey, if you hear these people speak that are like just very in tune with their purpose, they will say it's like life beyond the riches is where life begins. And if more people could understand that the chase to get the money eventually becomes boring, eventually becomes old, eventually loses its significance, you get to the top of the mountain, it's like, well, now what? Mm-hmm. Achievement only goes so far. Absolutely. And that's why it's like, can we build this depth? You could build, there's a saying, you could build 10 6-foot wells or just build 1 60-foot well and like plant that deep root 60 feet deep. So this idea of find these mentors in your life, and if you could really think about what do they have, what makes them who they are, why are they even a mentor, why are they a role model to you, how do they lead their life, what are the principles that they lead by and lead with, how do they lead their families, how do they lead themselves, what do they do when no one's watching? If you can answer some of these questions about a mentor or a role model or someone you look up to, you might be able to reveal some things about yourself of the things that you want to be more of or become more of because you have that inside of you, but maybe you need someone to bring that out of you or draw that out of you. Hence what education is rooted from, the Latin root educare, which means to draw out. So education is to draw out your potential, to draw out what the truth is about you. And if you can do that through events like we're putting on, or through reading or listening to audiobooks, or doing some personal growth, you'll find it. It's there. And if you have found it, awesome. Share that with the world because that is where the fruits of life lies.
I love it. I mean, that 60-foot well analogy is spot on. So many people come to me and they're like, my purpose, I think it's I want to run my own company. And it's like, cool, that's a job technically, right? It's a role that we play. Mike, you run your own company, I run my own company. I know a lot of entrepreneurs. Sometimes it's really sexy, sometimes it's really not. But it's like it's kind of cool, right? But your purpose isn't to be an entrepreneur, right? That's pretty shallow, right? It's a vehicle for your purpose, right? And so people think that it's like a role or a title or some accomplishment is like their purpose, right? My purpose is to make $1 million or make $10 million. It's like, no, you're missing the point, right? It's something deeper beyond that. And then your vehicle and like, these different things, like hitting $10 million. I'd love to have $10 million. That's by the way all that you need, right, to basically do everything you want. So that's my number, Mike, just to let you in. Sometime in the next 20 years, right, to at least have 10 mil. But basically the point I'm making is that's a goal, right? That's not a purpose. And so what we want is something much, much deeper. Another clue I'll just give you all is this idea that was introduced was, hey, what's your deepest wound, right? And it's like so often it's the wounds that we've where you've been cut the worst, where you've been hurt the most, where you've experienced the most depth of pain is oftentimes an area where you've experienced the most growth because of that wounding. And maybe you've overcome that, so you can actually teach it to others, right? And be the person who in that, when they're in their moment of need, when they're being wounded in a similar way, you can show up for them and really speak to them in that moment the way no one else can, right? The way that the most qualified person on paper can't, because they haven't experienced that same wound. Does anything show up for you on that?
And that's why what we said is life has a purpose, which is to avoid that suffering, right? Like if we want to avoid the suffering or to minimize the suffering, well, that means we've gone through some sort of suffering to feel or to empathize. So we empathize with that pain, and we've also gone through it, or we're currently going through it. When we understand that spring comes after winter, when we get through this winter season, now we're a few steps ahead. We're a season ahead of some other people. And if we realize that we're a season ahead of somebody else, we're not like we haven't finished the race. We could look back and say, hey, these are some of the things I learned. Now, if you might be thinking, well, shoot, they got to learn. If I had to learn on my own, they got to learn too. Maybe, but have you ever realized that anytime you do like an act of kindness for someone else, it brings you more energy? It's actually science. Like you get a dose of oxytocin when you do an act of kindness for someone else. If you don't go hold the door for a stranger, give a compliment to a stranger, give a homeless person, a sandwich, and like you'll see it's like, oh my gosh, God bless you. Like, thank you so much. Wow, that was really nice. And like you feel good after you did the service for them. So by you going through this pain and by you going through the wound and the healing process, doesn't mean you're fully healed, but you've taken a few steps, and then you help someone else, you'll get that dose of like, wow, maybe this is what I'm meant for. Hence, there's a gift inside the pain that is very hard to really put into concept, because when you're going through the pain, we can't typically find the gift. Death of a loved one, being in the hospital for 8.5 months with uncertainty with my son, right? Like, I mean, these are pains, near bankruptcy, end of a relationship, like car accidents, all these crazy things. Like, what's the gift? Oh my God, no one wants to answer that freaking question. What's the gift?
Yeah, I definitely am not going to ask someone in that moment, but no, yeah.
Right?
I mean, there always is a gift, is the lesson, right?
If you believe that to be the truth. I do believe that's to be the truth. There is a gift. And with my wife is a beautiful poster child of an example, because she has gone through the most horrific trauma that I've had the opportunity to witness, and also the pain of witnessing how much she's gone through during the last really several years of our journey through having our baby, and watching her go through the pain, and I'm not coaching my wife, just note to all the men listening, do not coach your wife. She doesn't need to be coached. She's not broken. Don't do it.
My wife's not interested in my coaching, right? Yeah. So,
don't coach.
Other people pay $500 an hour. She will, gladly pay me $500 an hour to shut up.
Yeah. So just a lesson there. But the point is by me just holding space and just watching, observing, now she's 450 days of a blog. She's mentoring. Coincidentally enough, one of my past Cutco reps just had a micro preemie, not knowing that there was any alignment there. Lindsay is almost like mentoring this early mid-20-year-old who had a micro preemie just like James, and she's like giving her guidance and support and like giving her, it's amazing. And she's in all these different Facebook groups, and she's working on an actual book to help trach moms. in the moment when all this was happening, I'm like, how the hell is she going to get off the couch? How is she going to want to show up and be a mom and support? It's like,
and it's like in those moments we have this option to like choose bitterness or to choose, you know, what's the opposite or what's the other option that I'm trying to say here? It's like we have bitterness as this option where I could turn into this, you know, resentful, bitter, angry person on the couch, waving my fist in the air.
It's almost like
God.
a servant. Like I'm going to serve other people.
Yeah,
I'm going to help.
yeah.
Like helpful, service,
yeah,
oriented.
It's just like acceptance, humility, service orientation. It's like, which direction do you want to go?
And it will click. Like at some point, you don't have to force the tide. That's kind of where I was going with the story is like, you don't have to force the tide to get to joy, right? You know, allow it to show up organically. And when it does, double down on it, you know, bet on it, invest in it, learn about it more, talk about it. It's been really beautiful for me to watch, you know, and I don't even know if she watches the show, so this isn't like, hey, Lindsay, you know, but this is, it's fun for me to experience and witness somebody who is on the journey of purpose through the wounds and through the pain, and you don't often get a front row seat of watching that or experiencing that.
Totally.
So.
And it's also something that's really cool to watch with clients. It's really cool to watch. Probably you've watched at your company, right? Somebody who's kind of gone through the motions and all of a sudden has this meteoric rise. Very rarely is it a skill set change that actually, you know, was the breakthrough. It's like, what are you doing differently? Oh, I learned this new skill and all of a sudden business tripled. It's never that. It's never that. Right? It's always, you know what? I found out why I really care about what I'm doing. I connected deeply to the meaning and purpose of why what we do at this organization matters, and I started communicating that to every single person on my team. And then it's like, boom, results.
Yeah, start with why. Simon Sinek, right? It's like think about the rework in the circles. It's a beautiful way of approaching life too.
Totally.
So.
Well, hey man, as we start to head for the exits and you know finish setting up here this beautiful event. You know, is there anything else that you want to share, you know, with the audience here today before we head for the curtains?
Yeah, what I would say is if you are a business owner, if you do run a business or you're an entrepreneur, I would highly recommend you to come up with your own personal purpose statement or your own reason for why you're doing what you're doing. Whether you're running a household, whether you're a parent or you want to be a parent or whatever legacy you want to have, get anchored to that. And then just tie that to your business. And the business becomes a vehicle for you to aggressively pursue whatever that is. So if you look at my business, my personal mission statement, as I said, to educate, inspire, be a force for good for myself and others. If you look at my Game Changer business, the Game Changer mission statement is to educate, inspire all representatives become exceptional individuals, and by making a difference in them and by developing ourselves as leaders, we can make a powerful impact in our community. So my mission statement of my business for the Game Changer organization is a vehicle for my personal mission statement. And it's when we created that, I don't know, a decade ago, business has completely gone up tremendously, compound growth, exponential growth, because I truly believe we got anchored to the purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we are about to close for the day. One thing I'll just say is I just want to give a call to action to everybody. If you're watching this live on YouTube, go ahead and click in the show notes or in the card below to schedule a call with us, you know, and learn a little bit about what we do. And we can actually walk you through step by step how to discover your purpose and kind of like, you know, the old joke of like the first one's free sort of thing. Like we're happy to jump on a free coaching call with you and, you know, and explore that a little bit. So check us out again or visit us at betterthanrich.com to learn more. Thanks everyone. And we'll see you next time on the Better Than Rich Show. Until then, remember to leave today better than you found it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram at betterthan_rich and join our Facebook group at the Better Than Rich Show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, leave today better than you found it.